The Nativity story isn't over. It reveals something we seldom, if ever, consider. God provides guidance and protection if we are willing to listen. In the story of Jesus' birth and early life, there is a chorus of voices influencing events, and most of the time, the recipients listen. The voices do not hint or suggest. They do not offer options. They give directions, commands. Let's start with Zechariah, John the Baptist's father. The angel Gabriel tells him that he and his elderly and barren wife Elizabeth will have a son. He doubts Gabriel's message. And Zach is rendered speechless. No, I mean really speechless. Could not talk. Now, in Luke 20, Gabriel says, "And you will be silent and not able to speak until the day this happens, because you did not believe my words." Zach does get his voice back after his son is born 9 months later, and agrees to call him John. He wanted to name him after himself, but he got the message. Now, Mary is also visited by Gabriel and told that she will bear the Son of God. However, she is betrothed to Joseph, a devout Jew. Betrothal or engagement means that the couple is promised to each other, but they will have virtually no social contact for the year until the wedding. Since Joseph is not the father, he should turn Mary over to the Sadducees, and she would be tried by the Sanhedrin and then stoned to death. She was well aware of the potential outcome when she said to Gabriel, "I am the Lord's servant." Now that's what you call faith. Mary's parents, Joachim and Anna, were also aware of the law. It must have been quite a shock and really distressing when they learned that Mary was pregnant. Can you imagine their reaction when their teenage daughter informed them of her pregnancy and that it was okay because God willed it? They decided to get Mary out of town. Providentially, they learned that cousin Elizabeth is also pregnant. Aha! The perfect excuse and place to send Mary. She spends 3 months with Zach and Elizabeth in a safe and protected environment. The angel of the Lord had a chat with Joseph in a dream. When Joseph woke up, he did what the angel of the Lord commanded and took Mary home as his wife, and that appears in Matthew 1:24. When the time came for the census registration, Joseph and Mary traveled from Nazareth to Bethlehem, a distance of about 90 miles, while she was 9 months pregnant and riding on the back of a mule. Historians estimate that it took the couple 9 days to complete the trip. The route was loaded with risks, including wild animals, lion and boar, and robbers. Yet they were kept safe. God chose to reveal Jesus' birth to shepherds in the field. He chose the lowly, not the privileged, to witness the event and spread the word. They listened and went to Bethlehem, leaving their sheep unattended, yet safe. Then the Magi showed up on Herod's doorstep looking for directions. Surely Herod knew of the coming of the new king of the Jews. Herod was stunned. He asked the Magi to report back when they found the infant so that he might also worship at the child's crib. Now understand that Herod the Great, 30 years on the throne, and known throughout the Roman Empire as the builder extraordinaire, was an insecure, maniacal piece of work who killed his second wife, Marianne, her 2 sons, her brother, her grandfather, and her mother. Let's say he was a bit unstable and even a little more jealous. The Magi were told, the Magi we were told were not locals. Melchior from Persia, today's Iran, Gaspar from India, and Balthazar from Arabia. traveled the 5 miles from Jerusalem to Bethlehem with their precious gift. They saw the babe and presented their gifts of gold, incense, and myrrh. The Magi were warned in a dream not to return to Herod. They listened to the voices. Mary and Joseph expected to return to Nazareth, so they only brought what they needed for the journey. They had no idea that they were about to flee to Egypt. God knew that the parents would need travel and business startup money. So he provided them with resources. Within 24 hours after the Magi departed, an angel visited Joseph and told him to pack up his family and head for Egypt. Now, given the short distance between Jerusalem and Bethlehem, soldiers could have made the trip in less than 1.5 hours. Herod had quickly figured out that he had been hoodwinked by the Magi. He ordered all male infants 2 years old and younger to be killed. Joseph listened again to the voice, and they beat it out of town before the soldiers arrived. We can't be sure that this actually happened. It only appears in Matthew, and it's not confirmed in Luke, but that's okay. Considering Herod's failing physical and mental health and his track record, it probably did happen. After Herod dies an ugly death in the year 4 of the current era, Joseph has a dream telling him to return from Egypt. As they are returning, he's told in another dream that Herod's son now reigned, a son from his first wife, because Herod had 7 wives. He's also not a very stable character. So they detour around Jerusalem to get to Nazareth, and they're saved by 2 more dreams. Somebody's been watching over this family for some time. In every case, the recipient of the message believed what was conveyed and acted accordingly, without question, and their safety and well-being was protected by God. The angel's dreams and voices provided specific direction, and the people involved followed the commands. God's will was done. Throughout my life, I've heard faint voices suggesting that I take one course of action or another. With few exceptions, when I ignored the voices, I paid the price, either immediately or sometime later on. Generally, however, when I heeded the voices, I prospered, or at least avoided a disaster. Often, it was a major choice. What education, what career, where to live, who to marry, what to believe, the big ones. We're usually on our own when it comes to less significant choices, like to diet or to not, a cocktail, beer, or neither, or to contribute to a cause, that sort of thing. How many times in your lives have you heard a voice or had a gut feeling and decided, nah, I'll do something else, or maybe just do nothing? And later you realize, hey, I shoulda, woulda, coulda gone with the voice or feeling. If I had, I'd be better off today. Who is it that tries to lead us in the right direction with a hint or a shove, and sometimes with a hammer over the head? Who's saying, hey dummy, what you're thinking is really a bad idea? Or don't you know something good when you see it? Sometimes I have real difficulty listening, let alone identifying the sources of the voice. Is it me talking to myself, or is it an external influence? Is it divine intervention, conscience, or intuition, or something dark like auditory hallucinations or messages from an unpleasant past? When presented with a big choice, I try to project an outcome to see if it's good for me, good for others, and morally correct. Is it comfortable to live with? That makes the choice easier. For example, should I rob that bank? I project the outcome and quickly decide that the envisioned benefits do not justify the risk. But often it's not clear. Projection is clouded or not even possible. Some external factors may twist my view. Let's go to a third-person case, or maybe it's a fourth-person case. Nobody here, of course. Say a man or a woman is traveling out of state on business, unaccompanied. In the course of a trip, they meet and are attracted to a person of the opposite sex. While they talk over dinner and a few drinks, a suggestion is made, etc., etc. The thought process might go something like this. The internal voice says, it's just a one-nighter. No one will ever know. It's free. Nothing else cooking tonight. We'll never see each other again. What's the harm? And then on the other side, somebody always knows. We know, I know, and God knows at the very least. What will be the impact on my relationships with my spouse? Is this the beginning of an alternative course in my life? What should one do when a questionable opportunity presents itself? I look inside. What's my inner voice telling me? And more importantly, where is that voice coming from? Is it me or someone better speaking to me? If only the message were as clear and from as trusted a source as the Nativity. If only I had the belief, the discipline, to go as directed without question, life would be so much easier and more divine. But my ability to listen is the real test. If God spoke to me, am I ready to and capable of listening? Would I recognize his voice? An incident that drove this point home to me was that of President Franklin Roosevelt, who often endured long receiving lines at the White House. He complained that no one really paid any attention to what he said. One day he tried an experiment. To each person who passed him in the line and shook his hand, he murmured, "I murdered my grandmother this morning." The guest responded with phrases like, "Marvelous, we're so proud of you. God bless you, sir." Near the end of the line, the ambassador from Bolivia actually listened to what he said. Nonplussed, the ambassador leaned over and whispered, "I'm sure she had it coming." I've come to the conclusion that if I listen to the voices of love, generosity, justice, and compassion, I cannot go too far wrong. Practice also helps. The more I listen and carefully consider the consequences of my voices, the better I get at discernment. This is a lifelong job, and fortunately, perfection is not a requirement. God gave us freedom of choice and responsibility for those choices. He gave us a set of rules and instructions, an example to follow, and a conscience. He said, "Do your best. When in doubt, refer to the book of instructions." If all else fails, God invites us to ask him for guidance directly. Now it seems appropriate that I shut up and listen. Amen. The next song is number 606. Yep.